Thank you, Chris. Hello, everyone. It's great to see so many people. And how have you been? You know, at the beginning of this whole year, we all had different hopes and different expectations. But then, of course, in March, I think it was the 15th of March, everything changed, and we started to rest. You didn't have any choice; you had to rest, and it was a rest that, I have to confess, I actually started to enjoy it. Resting, and it seemed to be quite nice not to have to go out anywhere, and these things were really positive. But not long after that, the novelty wore off, and the resting became tedious, and the resting became something that was actually a burden, and it was something that really was very frustrating. So I want to state right from the beginning that the theme that we're looking at today about resting in Jesus is certainly not tedious or a burden or frustrating. It's actually the resting that we've all been made to enjoy. It's something that we should enjoy and look forward to and be part of and really get a lot of benefit from. So I'm going to look at this theme today, and I'm just wondering, do you want to hear something really special? When we get messages, it's really quite exciting to read the content of them. In my time, when I was your age, we still got letters through the letterbox, and there wasn't. Sometimes, it was very normal stuff, but sometimes you get a special message, and it was really special because you had to go to the door, you get the mail, you open up the envelope, take the message out, read it. There was something really involved in it, and this is what I hope that this message will be for you today, that you're not just going to listen to it, you're actually going to be involved in it, and that it will be special to you, precious. I hope so anyway, because anytime that Jesus speaks, and as we read his words in the Bible, they are precious messages from Jesus. And Matthew 11:29 is no exception, because he talks about coming to him and finding rest in him, that he will give rest for our souls. And we recognize, actually, when Jesus speaks, we're actually hearing the wisdom that we need to hear, that there's no higher wisdom, no better advice, no greater authority that we can listen to than Jesus. So what a privilege it is to actually read the Bible, open it up, and see words that are recorded as having been spoken by Jesus. Like hundreds of people heard these things and stood by them and said, yes, Jesus really did say this, and we will follow him, and we will trust in him, and we will rest in him. And that's what we're going to look at today. From my generation, I don't want to give away my age, but probably when I mention the singer of a rock band from the 80s and 90s, David Coverdale, and he wrote these words, or at least he sang these words, and you'll be thankful that I'm not going to sing them, but I will read them. And the song goes, "There are times in my life I don't know which way to turn. When everything I touch, I get my fingers burned. Dreams to ashes, ashes to dust. When all that glitters is dull with rust. Restless heart, restless mind. I'm tired of wasting my precious time. I'm torn and tattered, shattered and worn. I've had enough trying to live my life in the eye of the storm. Every heartache leaves a scar on my face. Somebody reach out or throw me a line. Get me out of this place." Whether you like that song or not, I think you can understand that there's a real sense of the guy's restlessness when he's relating those words. In Lima and in many cities around the world, we see unrest on the streets. And sometimes I think it's a very good visual example of how many people, maybe you, are restless in your heart. Turmoil, restlessness, and struggles to deal with. So I want you to consider with me today, if you will, what it means to rest in Jesus, because coming from my point of view, and I really hope that that is something that you will share, the Bible teaches us a very precious and important thing, and there's nothing better than we can hear today than the message of God's word. So I'm going to say a little prayer now, and then we're going to look at a couple of things from God's word. So let's pray. Lord God, thank you that we can just come before you. We pray for your help to understand this theme, to benefit from it. Thank you for everyone that's here. And we pray that you will bless it to us in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, I'm just going to share something with you, and this is all very exciting for me because I usually use Zoom. So this is a new thing in a sense. So the first thing is resting in Jesus, and the passage I'm looking at to help us about resting in Jesus is actually in the Old Testament. Psalm 62, verses 5 to 8. Find rest, O my soul, in God alone. My hope comes from him. He alone is my rock and my salvation. He is my fortress. I will not be shaken. My salvation and my honor depend on God. He is my mighty rock, my refuge. Trust in him at all times, O people. Pour out your hearts to him, for God is our refuge. Well, as you can see, these are really beautiful words. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with the basic need that's in every single person, no matter where you're from, no matter what part of the globe you are living in right now. We all share the same condition, human condition. And that puts us all in a very, what we call in British English, a level playing ground. We're all in the same level. There's no exceptions. And if you're interested in technology, I'm pretty much sure that most of you know so much more than me. But what I know about computers is that we often need to get them checked for malware or viruses, and they come in all shapes and sizes, and it's so easy to let something into your computer that will actually work against it. And one of these things are called Trojan horses. And they take their name from a tremendous story from basically about Helen of Troy in ancient Greece. And I want to share with you the image now of that Trojan horse. I hope that you can see it in a second. So let's have a look. Maybe this isn't the exact image, but here is an example of what was being presented. So the idea with this is that there was the city of Troy, and the enemies of Troy were wanting to get Helen back for their king, and they presented this like a peace gift, of a goodwill gift to the people of Troy, or to the kings of Troy. And it was rolled up to the door, or the main entrance of the city, and a huge horse made of wood. And the people welcomed it and took it in. What they didn't realize was inside the wooden horse were elite soldiers, special forces soldiers that were designed, well, their whole intent was to get in behind the walls of the city, past the defense, and attack the city, take control of it, and achieve the aim that they wanted. So we see this in our computers, that sometimes, very simple, we might let something in onto our computers that is misleading us as to what it's really trying to do. It's coming in the guise of something that is maybe what we would like to see. And it's so easy for that to happen. So just a word of warning, I'm sure you all know, be very careful about what you agree and click yes to, for example, on your computer. And if you're interested in cars and trucks like I am, you might know that the electronics of the car are often, or the modern car at least, are often controlled by a computer. And it manages its emissions and the amount of fuel that goes into the engine and all sorts of things that enable the car to work. So the ECU is like a little computer, and it's plugged into the car and it manages the car. I don't know if you can remember some of the movies. You see the idea that someone can hack into the computer of a car and remotely control it, shut it down, and cause it to veer off to the side or whatever, or to brake, whatever the case would be. But most of the time, computers will record faults. You'll be able to see the faults that are affecting it. So in a car computer, and I hope you're still with me with this, the mechanic can come along with what's called a fault reader. He plugs it into the computer of the car, and it shows fault codes or error codes in the management of the car. And when the mechanic sees the fault codes, he can go to his book and realize, well, that fault code means I have to change this item in the running of the car, a sensor or a piece that is important to the running of the car. And the mechanic goes and gets the part and changes it, and the computer is then reset so that it's clean of the fault. It's a great way to see how technology is advancing. Well, in a sense, you and I are like computers. A little bit more understanding, I think, and I hope where we feel a lot more. Of course, computers don't love or anything, but we are like computers. And actually, part of us is more like a computer than we might care to admit. Our heart is often like a computer that I've been giving this illustration about. And it's sometimes unwittingly we let something in dangerous or some false hope or some desire that's inappropriate that can actually try to rule us and control our lives. And the problem is that it's so easy for us to let happen. But our problem isn't restricted to things that affect us from the outside. These influences are real. The main problem is what's on the heart, on our human computer, as it were, if you like, because we have been corrupted by the virus of sin from day one, from the day our parents conceived us, from the day that the essential elements of our being were put together in our mother's womb. That was from the point of that point, the point of that start. We were corrupted by what's called sin. Sin is everything it causes a broken relationship with God that goes against what God stands for. God is perfect and holy and loving and just and merciful and good. And sin works in people to go against God. And I think that maybe explains why so many people actually hate God and reject God. It's just that's what their human nature is. And they need they need a miraculous change in their life. They need their hearts to be changed. They need their computer to be reset, having been cleaned. So isn't it wonderful then that Jesus talks about finding rest in him, and that he provides the remedy that you and I need so much. And he can clean the heart, and he can help us fight against the Trojan horses which seek to harm us and control us. So you and I, well, we face difficulties in 2020, what with school and church online. How are you doing? I don't know, but I'm getting a little bit fatigued by online things. We just want to get back to what it was before. Well, we've got protocols to follow. We've got to wear masks. We've got to use alcohol gels and all sorts of things. And we've got to be careful about how we interact with people, keeping a distance. All these things are difficulties of living in 2020. We see protests in the streets. The president of Peru was impeached the other day, and someone else was put in his place. There's a lot of people that are upset about that. They're protesting. These are difficulties of living in 2020. These are outward pressures. But we can deal properly with the fears and the challenges of life, the issues of 2020, but we must first get right with God. Our starting point is to get right with God. Jesus is truly God and truly human. When Jesus says, I will give you rest, he's speaking with the authority of God, but he's also speaking with the understanding of a man. And it's on the basis of trusting in him and asking God to forgive all that we think and say and do that is against God's holy and perfect ways. When we have that basis of trust, then we can begin to deal with the circumstances in which we live. When we get right with God by his grace, working in us, transforming us, yes, even creating us a clean heart and giving us a new desire to follow God, to know God, to be the humanity that we've been created to be. Well, this psalm teaches us that God is the unique and the only answer for our deepest and most essential need. So you might be looking at this whole theme of resting in God, but realize, please, that actually Jesus is the only answer for you. There is nothing that will match what he can give. Resting in Jesus is truly the appropriate thing, but it's not an empty phrase. So someone once said, words without actions are empty. Well, what can we see in Psalm 62 that helps us know that Jesus' words are not empty? I think, according to the psalm writer, there's evidence. He says, he alone is my rock and my salvation. He is my fortress. I will not be shaken. So I want to show you something that is very precious to me. In just a few weeks ago, I had a privilege of returning to Scotland for a few weeks, and my son and I, we climbed a mountain. I'm not saying this is the mountain. This is a rock that is very similar to the one that we found shelter in. You see, when we were climbing the mountain, the mountains of Scotland, they're not high like the ones in the Andes, but they are spectacular, and there's beautiful landscapes to see. And I'm very proud of my homeland. I'm very happy when I'm able to climb a mountain and go hill climbing in other places as well. But there came a point in the climb where the wind was really, really cold, and we were getting tired. And we decided, well, the best thing for us would be to find a place that we could stop and eat something, but maybe more than anything else, just get out of the cold wind for a few minutes. And that's what we did. We stopped in at this huge rock and hid in its cover. And really, it was a really fantastic thing, because just that recovery time, that resting in the cover of the rock, it was something very, very good for us. We benefited from it. We probably needed it so that we could progress and get to the top of the mountain. We were shielded by the rock. And if any of you know of Bear Grylls, the survival expert, he often speaks of finding the right protection in order to survive the conditions. Well, we found the right protection and we survived the conditions. When we rest in Jesus, we find that he is like a huge rock in which we can be protected. We can find his cover over us to protect us. You know, some rocks are large enough that they actually allow a person to hide within them in a crevice, in an opening of the rock. And in the Old Testament, we read of how the Israelites sometimes would run to the rocks to find their refuge in the rocks when they were attacked by enemies, for example. And they could be hidden in the rocks and protected by the rocks. They could be, they felt safe there, and it was the place that they needed to go. We trusted in the protection of that mountain rock when we were climbing that mountain in Scotland. But this is the great thing. You can trust the power of Jesus Christ. He can protect you from the greatest of enemies. The writer doesn't stop there. He talks about a fortress. Okay, so what about in Scotland, for example? What is it famous for? Well, some people think it's famous for castles. And yes, you're right. It's famous for castles. So here's Eilean Castle. This castle is on the way to the island of Skye, where my family is from. And whenever we went to visit family or went on holiday, vacations to the island of Skye, we would pass this castle. So it's a very, very personally sentimental castle for me in my childhood, and I remember it vividly. But one of the great things about it is that it's set right out in the middle of this loch or a lake, and there's only a very narrow bridge to get to it. Now, historically, when the people were under a threat, they would make sure they were behind the walls of the castle, the king's castle, and they were protected there. That was the safest place that could be. Nowhere else afforded them the protection that the castle of the king could give. And the psalm writer in Psalm 62 is saying, not only is God his rock, that he can rest in the cover of the rock, in the protection of the rock, he can rest in the protection of the king's castle. And you can do the same. Resting in Jesus means that we can make sure that we're trusting in him and knowing him to be our savior. And when by his help we are behind the walls of his protection, there's no Trojan horse that will get in. It's perfect protection. Truly, Jesus is a fortress that we can find our complete safety in. There's a lot of evil in the world, and evil happens to good people, even happens to Christians. A lot of bad things happen in this world. That is a reality. But our souls, having trusted in Jesus Christ, are protected, not just in this life, but for eternity. So no matter what happens in this world, no matter what unrest there is in the street, no matter what protest there might be, no matter what fear, no matter what 2020 coronavirus stuff brings to our experience, it's all put in the right perspective. Because if you're right with Jesus, if you're right with God, trusting in Jesus, you are safe in him. Nothing can take you out of that safety, because you're covered by the rock. You're in the castle. He is your fortress. So resting in Jesus, it results to being all these things. But the psalm writer, he doesn't stop there. He says, pour out your hearts to him, for God is our refuge. I love the way he finishes there. It's like all this reality of God. God is so big and great and wonderful and strong and all these things. But guess what? We can speak to him. We can open up our hearts to him like we can do to no one else. We're never alone. We have the promise of God with us, that he'll be with us always. We have the benefit of an ongoing relationship. We've been brought into his family. We're right with God, our creator. God is always attentive to our cries and our prayers. He's listening. He's open. He's listening to you right now. And when we can be open and honest with God, it's the most sensitive and private things can be shared with him that we don't feel we can say to anyone else. We can ask him to help us to do what is right. We can ask him to help us behave in the ways that are good, that actually honor him. We can rest assured that he knows what's best for us and that he loves us. And he delights. We can pour out our hearts to him. What's on your heart today? Well, if your heart is anything like mine, it's a bit of a mess. There's lots of questions. Yeah, I'll confess there are fears. Sometimes I'm like someone with a heavy burden, but then I remember that I can come to Jesus and I can ask him to give me strength. And I can read the Bible and I can read that he says, come to me, cast your burden upon the Lord and he will sustain you. Come to me and I will give you rest. And you know what? All that mess, well, it's sorted out. God's word is applied to me and my mess is sorted. My fears are dealt with. I realize that I'm in the cover of the rock, protected in the conditions. But not only that, I'm in the house of the Lord. I'm in the family of God. It's like I'm in the castle and I'm safe. And he will always protect me. He will give you strength for today. He will hold you gently but firmly, telling you you're resting in Jesus. Do not fear. Have hope. Be encouraged. This whole world might disintegrate. So what? If you're safe in the castle of Jesus Christ, you're truly safe. And this is the only answer for every man and woman and boy and girl, no matter where they're from, no matter where they are today, no matter where they will be tomorrow. This is the answer, Jesus Christ. And we are just called to be obedient and to respond by his grace and say, yes, I will rest in Jesus. Let's pray. Lord God, we just thank you for giving us some verses from the Bible that help us to understand what a wonderful thing it is to trust in Jesus. And we pray that every person in this group today will know the peace that comes from Jesus Christ. And as we rest in him, that is not tedious, it's not frustrating, it's not a burden, it's liberating. It's giving us strength for every day. It's giving us hope for tomorrow and for eternity. Lord God, what a privilege it is to know you as our Savior. Bless each one of us in the school community and in this wider expat community in Lima. And we pray that you'll hear our prayers in Jesus' name. Amen.